All right. As a reminder, thank you again for joining today's 2025 Apprenticeship Expansion Competitive Grant Program Notice of Funding Opportunity Information Session. Today's session will be recorded and posted online later this week. So if you have anyone who is unable to attend today, that you will be able to view this later in the future, along with certain Q&A sessions at the end of the question that are also posed. I would like to introduce our team, Chase, Jennifer, Nathaniel, and John, who will be our presenters and panelists today. There will be time at the end of, hopefully time at the end of the session to answer questions and answers. If not, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section in the option below your screen or in the chat box, and we can catalog those and reach out to you as needed at the end of the webinar if we are unable to get to those questions later today. And with that, I will hand it off to Chase.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's 2025 Apprenticeship Expansion NOFO Information Session. This session is brought to you by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, also known as DCEO, and the Office of Employment and Training. We're here to provide an overview of the new Notice of Funding Opportunity, also known as the NOFO, for apprenticeship expansion in Illinois. My name is Chase Martin, and I'm the grant manager for this Notice of Funding Opportunity. What we're going to be going over today, this NOFO is designed to expand registered apprenticeship programs, also known as RAPs, which are here throughout the whole presentation. It's going to support high impact intermediaries and increase access to apprenticeships across the state. So today we will walk through the key elements of this funding opportunity, including an overview of Illinois' strategy for expanding apprenticeship, the NOFO itself, requirements of the grantees, eligibility, and important deadlines. Anytime during this information session, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A section and we will address them at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. So the apprenticeship aligns with Illinois' workforce development priorities, and we're going to do an overview of what the apprenticeship expansion is. So why apprenticeship? Apprenticeships offer a proven model for workforce development, economic mobility, and industry growth. They are a win-win for everyone. They provide training and careers for individuals while also providing employers with their skilled workforce. The Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship Committee, and Apprenticeship Illinois all work to ensure apprenticeships are integrated into Illinois' workforce strategy. This notice of funding opportunity aligns with the governor's action agenda for workforce development and job creation, emphasizing apprenticeships as a key pathway for upskilling Illinois workers. Integrating the Illinois' essential employable skills framework ensures that participants have critical workforce skills beyond technical training. And finally, this funding opportunity supports sector-based partnerships, helping businesses develop structured, high-quality training programs to build a stronger workforce and provide great jobs.
Hold on one second, Chase. Somebody says they can't see. Can you see my screen, Chase?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay.
Mine is also showing.
All right. So hopefully you're able to work that out. Sorry. And we will be sharing this on the NOFO page.
All right. So next slide, I think, Jen. Yep. Okay. So what is a registered apprenticeship? Registered apprenticeship is an industry-driven, high-quality career pathway validated by the U.S. Department of Labor, also known as USDOL. There are 7 key elements of registered apprenticeship programs, or RAPs, included. They are industry-led programs designed with employers and industry program development, paid employment from day one, structured on-the-job learning, supplemental classroom education, equal opportunity and inclusion standards, quality, safety, and credentializing. Unlike traditional training programs, apprenticeships ensure workers earn while they learn, developing the skills they need in real-world work environments. There are also multiple benefits of apprenticeships for employers. Apprenticeships are a proven workforce solution for employers. Apprenticeship is a flexible training model model that can be customized to meet the needs of every business and industry. Some of the benefits include recruiting and developing a highly skilled workforce, increased productivity and employee retention, cost-effective training aligned with industry needs, access to state and federal incentives, and tax credits. This NOFO will support high-impact apprenticeship intermediaries to help employers start, expand, and sustain registered apprenticeship programs. So an overview of the Illinois Apprenticeship Program. The purpose of this program is designed to create more apprenticeships that empower Illinois workers and support employers. In Illinois, the current landscape shows that employer demand for talent is growing. However, the number of individuals who are seeking apprenticeship opportunities still exceed the actual number of apprenticeship opportunities that exist. More structured apprenticeship pathways are needed to bridge the gap between talent supply and employer needs. This NOFO focuses on scaling apprenticeship opportunities statewide through targeted support for intermediaries that help businesses and apprentices succeed. And Jim Foyle is going to talk about the apprenticeship framework now. Oh, Jen, you're muted.
Amateur hour here. Thank you. Thanks, Chase. So back in, it was either 2017, I believe, that time frame. Well, 2016, the Apprenticeship Committee was created for the Workforce Board. And back in, during that time, they were discussing what's the best way to expand apprenticeship for the state of Illinois. And so we have the Apprenticeship Committee. As most of you know, Illinois does not have its own state apprenticeship agency. So this committee, which is now the Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship Committee, they really serve as the guiding body for us, giving us advice and looking into what other states are doing and what could work best for apprenticeship for the state of Illinois. And many people are represented on this committee across the state and different agencies. And so they decided that the best way to expand apprenticeships were to ease the burden on employers. And to do this, it would be through two different ways: through apprenticeship specialists, which at first we called them navigators. And apprenticeship specialists, they're very much employer focused. They're there to help employers become aware of apprenticeships and help them get those programs started and launch. But then also another key aspect of expanding apprenticeship were apprenticeship intermediaries. And the intermediaries are very much participant focused. And as you'll see, as Chase goes on during this presentation, there will definitely be overlap between these two. These are, we believe, the easiest way to expand, or the best way to expand apprenticeship for the state of Illinois. Currently, the state of Illinois is funding apprenticeship specialists around the state. If you want to find find out more about the apprenticeship specialist, you can go to apprenticeshipillinois.com, click on that employer icon, and it'll list the apprenticeship specialists throughout the state. We're funding those already. So the focus of this particular NOFO is that yellow circle, the apprenticeship intermediaries. And this NOFO is designed to support, like Chase said, the high impact intermediaries. And the goal is to create structured, accessible, and industry-aligned apprenticeship pathways. Back to you, Chief.
All right, so kind of the overview of the 2025 Notice of Funding Opportunity. The 2025 Apprenticeship Expansion Notice of Funding Opportunity, or the NOFO, is designed to support high-impact intermediaries that will administer apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs within Illinois. This funding aligns with the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board's, also known as IWIB, strategies to integrate apprenticeships into statewide workforce planning. The focus on developing intermediaries that can sustain and scale registered apprenticeship programs to meet employer and industry needs. So why are intermediaries important? Because they provide direct services to participants, ensuring they are placed in registered apprenticeship programs or pre-apprenticeship programs that offer a pathway to a registered apprenticeship program. They bridge the gap between employers, apprentices, and workforce development partners, making apprenticeship programs more accessible and scalable. So who will this NOFO serve? Adults enrolling in non-traditional and in-demand registered apprenticeships, youth and young adults, and people with disabilities seeking apprenticeships. This NOFO is going to be governed by the Workforce Innovation of Opportunity Act, also known as WIOA, and the National Apprenticeship Act, ensuring compliance with federal workforce policies. And then here are some of the funding details about this NOFO. The total funding available can be up to $10 million, but please note this is contingent on whether a state receives the U.S. Department of Labor State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula competitive grant. So the funding sources will be $5 million from the WIOA statewide activities, and then up to $5 million from the USDOL, the Department of Labor State Apprenticeship Expansion Grant. And that's going to be depending on if we receive the funds or not. Some of the award details, the awards will range between $200,000 and $1 million per recipient, and we anticipate the number of awardees to be between 10 and 35. Some additional details are the matching requirements will not be required. Pre-award costs will be allowed since there may be a gap between the timing of the award commitments and the actual award. The indirect costs are allowed and are subject to the NOFO guidelines. And funding restrictions will also be will be detailed in full on the NOFO document. So here's some applicant eligibility that we'll go over. So who can apply to this? This NOFO is open to a range of workforce and education organizations, including community-based organizations, municipalities, education institutions, such as high schools, different school districts, and community colleges, industry associations, state and county agencies, Illinois local workforce boards, and nonprofits. So why are these organizations? These entities are well positioned to design, implement, and sustain apprenticeship programs in partnership with employers and workforce stakeholders. Applicants must have the capacity to support participant recruitment, employer engagement, training coordination, and compliance with apprenticeship regulations. Both experienced and new providers are encouraged to apply. Partnerships with the industry, training, or education providers and workforce agencies will be key to a strong application. Now we're going to describe some of the program requirements. Through this NOFO, DCEO expects to fund high-impact intermediaries. So high-impact apprenticeship intermediaries play a crucial role in the success of the apprenticeship programs. They provide comprehensive services to support both employers and apprentices, removing barriers that often prevent businesses from adopting apprenticeship models. This NOFO prioritizes participant-focused projects, meaning the core goal is to ensure apprenticeship success, accessibility, and long-term career impact. Intermediaries will ease the administrative burdens for employers and create structured support systems for apprentices. Successful applicants will propose a plan to fulfill the following 8 responsibilities while working in partnership and alignment with existing Apprenticeship Illinois ecosystem, including apprenticeship specialists and integrated business service teams where available. So here's the first of the 8 responsibilities of the intermediaries. They're going to be to design and develop a registered program. A key responsibility of the intermediaries is to design and develop new registered apprenticeship programs or RAPs, or expand existing ones. This includes aligning programs designed with industry needs, working with industry and employers to determine program standards to include required supplemental education and on-the-job learning, and also ensuring seamless integration of apprentices into the workforce. Intermediaries must collaborate with employers, training, or education providers and workforce organizations to create high-quality programs. This also applies to pre-apprenticeship programs or activities which are not registered but should provide a design pathway to a registered program. The next responsibility is going to be administrative oversight. So a strong program administration is key to ensuring compliance, tracking success, and securing long-term sustainability. Intermediaries are responsible for submitting documentation for program compliance, collecting and inputting data into required reporting systems, tracking case management participants, ensuring apprentices receive the necessary support. Intermediaries must manage reporting to meet both state and federal requirements. Grantees must use the Illinois WorkNet system to track program performance and participant outcomes, ensuring transparency and accountability. Another responsibility is employer engagement. Employer engagement is the foundation of a successful apprenticeship program. Without committed employers, apprenticeships cannot exist or function. Intermediaries must recruit and work with employers to partner in the programs while aligning the programs to the employer needs. Intermediaries will work with the industry to identify their pain points and workforce gaps. When needed, intermediaries will match employers with qualified apprentices. The goal is to simplify the process for employers, making apprenticeship a viable solution for talent development. Another responsibility is the recruitment and equitable access. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are key priorities for this NOFO. Intermediaries must ensure participants are adequately prepared for apprenticeships, address unique barriers that keep participants from staying in and completing programs, and recruit a diverse talent pool to ensure equitable access to apprenticeship opportunities. And also, these programs should be intentional in outreach, recruitment, and retention strategies to reflect the diversity of Illinois' workforce. Another responsibility is the program management. Intermediaries serve as the primary liaison between apprentices, employers, training or education providers, and workforce development partners. Responsibilities include providing ongoing program oversight and support, offering comprehensive services to ensure apprentices stay on track, and ensuring program completion rates remain high by addressing challenges early. Intermediaries play a critical role in the long-term success of the apprentices and the apprenticeship ecosystem. Another responsibility is the coordination of career planning. Career planning is a customer-centered approach that helps apprentices navigate their career pathways. Intermediaries will provide individual assessments to determine skills and career goals, individual employment plans or IEPs tailored to each apprentice's need. A structured career planning approach ensures apprentices not only complete the program, but also transition into long-term career opportunities. Another responsibility is coordination of related instruction. Apprenticeship programs require a balance of on-the-job learning and classroom learning. Intermediaries must ensure classroom instruction is aligned with the employer needs, coordinate the training schedules and content to complement the on-the-job learning, monitor and track apprenticeship progress to ensure quality training. A strong collaboration with education and training providers is essential. And the last responsibility is apprenticeship support and retention. Ensuring apprentice retention is a key focus of this NOFO. Intermediaries will provide case management services to track participant progress, academic and professional support such as tutoring, mentoring, and exam preparation, and supportive services which can include transportation, childcare, and work attire. Comprehensive support systems help apprentices complete their programs and transition into full-time careers. Now Nate is going to talk about more detail on what the registered apprenticeship is.
Yes, thank you, Chase, and good afternoon, everybody. Before we go any further in today's presentation, we wanted to make sure that we all had a sort of base level of knowledge about what is registered apprenticeship. Some of you may be old pros with apprenticeship. You're thinking yada, 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 get to the money. We need to set a base level of knowledge because if you're new to apprenticeships, you're welcome to, and we're glad you're here. So what is registered apprenticeship? We can define it with these 7 qualities we have listed here. Registered apprenticeships are structured, industry-driven programs that combine on-the-job learning with classroom instruction to develop and retain highly skilled workers. And so the key components of registered apprenticeship, number 1, they are industry-led. Programs are designed and led by employers to meet their workforce needs. Neither the state of Illinois or DCEO or DOL ever tells employers what their programs have to look like. Our apprenticeship specialists and intermediary network work with them to develop programs that are led by their knowledge of their industry. Apprenticeships are paid jobs, and apprentices actually earn wages from day one. Unlike other models like internships, which also have their merits, apprentices are paid from day one, and apprentices actually receive structured wage increases, what we call a progressive wage increases, as they move throughout their program that reflect their skill gains in real time, which is one of the reasons why they retain so well. Apprenticeships include structured on-the-job learning with an assigned mentor or a group of mentors that are assigned by their employer. So they're receiving the best of mentorship both on the job and also in a classroom, because apprentices also receive supplemental education. It's relevant classroom instruction that complements their on-the-job learning. They're getting the best of theory and practice. Apprentices are an equal employment opportunity. Programs must be inclusive and follow non-discrimination policies to ensure that all applicants receive equal treatment and have equal opportunity to succeed in these programs. And apprenticeships are a high quality and safe training opportunity. Apprentices work in safe environments with high training standards to ensure not only that they're safe throughout their program, but that they are remaining safe workers well into their careers. Lastly, apprentices receive credentials. They graduate with a nationally recognized portable credential from the Department of Labor, and many apprentices will also receive additional credentials, licenses, degrees, etc., over the course of their program by completing that supplemental training. Now, you'll notice that the top icons on this slide here are mostly some of the employer-facing components of a program. They're industry-led. It's a paid job. Obviously, the employer's the one paying them, and they receive structured on-the-job learning. That bottom row is really those icons and those components where the intermediary has the chance to contribute the highest impact. They're providing or coordinating the supplemental education. They are providing equal access to the program participants and applicants. They're ensuring quality and safety and supporting the apprentice to complete the program and earn those credentials along the way and at completion. And so now we'll move on to talk about pre-apprenticeships. This program obviously supports not only registered apprenticeships, but pre-apprenticeships as well. So a pre-apprenticeship is a structured training program that, what else, prepares individuals to enter into a registered apprenticeship program by providing foundational skills and hands-on learning. It should be noted that proposals funded through this NOFO should demonstrate they are including the following 6 elements of a quality pre-apprenticeship within the design of their program. And these 6 elements of a quality pre-apprenticeship include the following. Number 1, inclusive recruitment. Recruitment efforts for your pre-apprenticeship program must be designed as such to be inclusive and accessible for the individuals that you're going to be working with. They should have an industry-focused curriculum and training that is designed to align with employer needs. It's not going to adequately prepare individuals if employers at the end of the day don't see the value in the training you've provided. Pre-apprenticeships that are quality include hands-on learning, including work-based experiences that either simulate industry conditions or provide actual work experiences. Successful pre-apprenticeship programs have success-oriented retention services. The program can include supports such as mentorship, career counseling, and financial assistance. As we know, all of those things help to reduce barriers, not only in registered apprenticeship, but also in that pre-apprenticeship process. Importantly, having employer and registered apprenticeship connections to your pre-apprenticeship. The programs have partnerships with employers and are either already linked to actual ongoing apprenticeships or are in the process of linking them to new or existing apprenticeship programs. So even if you don't currently have, relationships with employers or existing apprenticeship programs, if you are pursuing designing a pre-apprenticeship, the end goal is that you do have those relationships so that those pre-apprentices can move into an apprenticeship. Lastly, ideally, participants in a pre-apprenticeship earn certifications or credentials that prepare them for a wrap. And with that, I think I will hand things back to Chase. Thanks.
Or I'll take it for
Or
a
take to
second.
Jen.
Yeah. So the purpose of this grant is to create and expand apprenticeships. So this NOFO will fund intermediaries to create new and or expand existing registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship pathways directly connected to registered apprenticeships. So what does that mean? It means that this particular NOFO will not fund pre-apprenticeships just on their own. Now, You may have a pre-apprenticeship activities going on, and you may not have a pathway to a registered apprenticeship at the moment, but that's okay. You just need it by the end of this grant period. So you need to show in your proposal how you are taking the pre-apprenticeship activities and creating a pathway to registered apprenticeship. If you do not have an existing registered apprenticeship for your pre-apprenticeship activities, then you can use these funds to do curriculum development, reaching out to employers. You can use it for the supplemental education or on-the-job learning, even train the trainer programs for mentors or for the employers. But a strong application will demonstrate their capacity and outline clear pathways showing how the pre-apprenticeship training can transition their participants into registered apprenticeship programs within the grant period, within the grant time frame. Along these same lines, we just want to say something that we just want to emphasize, that we're looking for quality apprenticeship programs. So the designation of an occupation as, quote, apprenticeable, and that's a USDOL word, just because it's apprenticeable does not mean it's beneficial for long-term success for either the apprentice or even the employer. So the U.S. Department of Labor has over 1,300 occupations already identified as apprenticeable occupations. But please note that not all occupations are suitable for apprenticeships, we believe. So for this NOFO, we don't want to see proposals where the registered apprenticeship is something that is, and for example, we have on the slide here, is just a CNA. So certified nursing assistant, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, is an apprenticeable occupation in and of itself. However, we know that CNAs are they are low wages, low skills, and high turnover. So we don't want to use the seed money and this investment for CNAs. However, if you think that the CNA is a good fit as part of a registered nurse registered apprenticeship program, it's just part of the apprenticeship program as a whole, that's perfect. Or if it is the pre-apprenticeship activity that is leading to a registered apprenticeship, that works as well. But the reason for this is that there are already funds out there that help entry-level people into entry-level jobs. And we're shooting for those mid-level or higher tier jobs that needs higher skills and is also provides a stable career. So the goal is to fund apprenticeships at that mid-level or higher roles, high-skilled, well-paying, stable careers. Now back to Chase.
All right. So the key to a strong application is having program partners. So competitive applications must include memorandums of understanding, or MOUs, or written agreements with key partners. MOUs will outline the employer commitments to apprenticeship placements, training or education providers' roles in delivering supplemental education, and community-based organizations' contributions, example, supportive services and recruitment. So why is this important? Partnerships ensure that apprenticeship programs are employer-driven and sustainable. Strong applications show integration with existing workforce development efforts. Okay, so the notice of funding opportunities include the following eligible participants: adults seeking apprenticeship pathways in non-traditional and in-demand occupations, youth and young adults seeking apprenticeship pathways in non-traditional and in-demand occupations, individuals with disabilities seeking apprenticeship pathways in non-traditional and in-demand occupations. Those will be the three eligible participants for this NOFO. Next two slides include examples of non-traditional occupations. As we mentioned earlier, there are over 1,300 occupations approved by DOL as being apprenticeable. If a role in an organization requires intensive training, it is probably apprenticeable. Through the CEJA, FEJA, and Illinois Works programs, Illinois is already funding many apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, and other workforce training in the trades. This NOFO will not fund any programs that could be funded through those. Example of non-traditional occupations include the healthcare, of non-traditional, they include healthcare, which is RN, pharmacy technicians, and surgical technologists. IT and cybersecurity, such as software developers, data analysts, and quantum computing. And also finance and business, which are bankers, project managers, and HR professionals. Some more examples of non-traditional occupations include architecture and engineering, such as urban planners and landscape architects, creative industries such as graphic designers and video producers, and in the public sector and government, such as public safety, infrastructure, and educators. So now we're going to kind of talk about the tracking and case management and reporting requirements for NOFO. All participants receiving grant-funded services must be tracked. Therefore, all intermediaries are responsible for case managing every apprentice and using the Illinois WorkNet system for intake, tracking, and program outcomes. And why does this matter? It ensures accountability and transparency in the grant spending, and it helps measure apprentice success rates and program impact. From the state's perspective, the following are the statewide outcomes and goals we have for this funding as a whole. The 2025 Apprenticeship Expansion NOFO sets ambitious statewide targets to expand and improve apprenticeship programs. For registered apprenticeships over the period of the grant, we want 400 registered apprentices to be served. 15 new registered apprenticeship programs or RAPs will be created, and 15 existing registered apprenticeship programs will be expanded. For the pre-apprenticeships over the period of the grant, we want 400 pre-apprentices to be served. 200 pre-apprentices will successfully transition into a registered apprenticeship program. 15 new pre-apprenticeship programs will be established, and 15 existing pre-apprenticeship programs will be expanded. The following measures will be tracked for each grantee. Grantees will be required to meet specific performance targets for registered apprenticeship programs, depending on their proposal and award amount. Some key measures include the number of registered apprentices enrolled in a registered apprenticeship program, total apprentices who achieve measurable skills gain, total apprentices who complete the registered apprenticeship program, total apprentices who earn an industry recognized credential or credentials in addition to the U.S. Department of Labor credential, number of new registered apprenticeship programs created and approved, and the number of existing registered apprenticeship programs expanded. Why this matters to you? These measures help track program success and impact, ensuring apprentices are progressing toward industry recognized credentials and long-term careers. Pre-apprenticeship programs also have performance goals and measures. Grantees providing pre-apprenticeship activities must also meet performance goals, ensuring they are effectively providing participants pathways into a registered apprenticeship program. Some key measures include the number of pre-apprentices served, total pre-apprentices who achieve a measurable skills gain, total pre-apprentices who complete an apprenticeship education training program, total pre-apprentices who receive a degree or credential, number of pre-apprentices who successfully transition into a registered apprenticeship program before the grant ends, number of new pre-apprenticeship programs established, and number of existing pre-apprenticeship programs that are expanded. A successful pre-apprenticeship program must have structured pathway into a registered apprenticeship program. Funding is not available for pre-apprenticeship programs that do not provide that pathway to a registered apprenticeship program. Now we're going to talk about the WIOA performance measure, performance and eligibility. The $5 million in statewide activity funds are subject to WIOA performance measures and some eligibility criteria. Therefore, projects that provide direct services to participants must meet Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, performance measures. Each grantee must track and report performance according to the local Workforce Innovation Area, or the LWIA, negotiated performance measures listed in Appendix D of the NOFO. If the grantee is not an LWIA, WIOA performance measures will be determined at the state level. This ensures apprenticeship programs align with the state and local workforce development goals. and helps measure the effectiveness of funded programs in preparing participants for long-term careers. Now we're going to get into the WIOA eligibility for youth. This NOFO aligns with WIOA priorities for serving youth with barriers to employment. Eligible youth include out-of-school youth, ages 16 to 24, not attending school with one or more employment barriers. And also in-school youth, ages 14 to 21, attending school and low income and facing one or more employment barrier. The goal is to support youth in transitioning into post-secondary education, training, and employment, and also ensure youth attain credentials and have access to pre-apprenticeship pathways that lead to registered apprenticeship programs to secure long-term career pathways. So WIOA eligibility for youth. This slide spells out the eligibility criteria for in-school youth. Please note, if the state only funds applications with the $5 million in statewide activities funds, then youth must meet the eligibility criteria. If the state receives the extra $5 million through the U.S. Department of Labor State Apprenticeship Expansion Formula competitive grant, then you may not have to meet the WIOA eligibility criteria. The bottom line is the eligibility requirements will be determined by the grant funding source. Now let's go ahead and switch gears to the application and submission information. All the grants are subject to the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act, also known as GATA. The purpose of GATA is to increase transparency and accountability in grant funding, reduce administrative burdens on both state agencies and grantees, align with federal grant regulations under the 2 CFR Part 200, the uniform requirements. The application should ensure they understand the GATA requirements to avoid compliance issues that could delay funding. So the grantee pre-qualification, all applicants must be registered in the GATA portal at the time of the application. And what does this mean for you? If your entity is not pre-qualified, your application will not be reviewed. Pre-qualification includes automated verification of your SAM.gov account statuses, the Federal Unique Identification Number, or the UEI, good standing with the Illinois Secretary of State, not being on federal excluded parties list, and not being on the Illinois Stop Payment or DHFS provider sanction list. Use the GATA portal to check your statuses and resolve any issues before your submission. Organizations should start this process as early as possible. A pre-qualification notification. Once pre-qualified, the GATA portal will send an email with a qualified status. If issues arise, the portal will email the applicant with details on how to resolve them. Common issues that may require correction include the expired UEI number, a SAM cage code is not current, not in good standing with the Secretary of State, appearing on the federal excluded parties list. What should you do if any of these happens? Or what should you do? Monitor your emails from GATA and resolve any of these issues as quickly as possible, and reach out for technical assistance as needed. Now, considering your application, you must submit the following to be considered a complete application. Required application components: the uniform grant application, which is a fillable PDF, the uniform budget, conflict of interest disclosures, mandatory disclosures forms, formatted grant technical proposal, a project work plan that is on an Excel spreadsheet. The attachments are located on the Excel spreadsheet, and they include the project summary, participant information and outcomes, employer information and outcomes, registered apprenticeship training details, pre-apprenticeship training details, your staffing plan, and goals and activity timeline. Staff resumes and MOUs and partnership agreements are also required for submission. Applications that lack required documents may be rejected. MOUs with employer partners are critical for demonstrating program sustainability. Strong applications provide detailed program goals, expected participant outcomes, and employer commitments. The uniform grant application for state assistance is a simple document everyone must complete. It includes agency information, funding opportunity information, instructions on how to submit the application, required grant information, applicant completed section, which includes the applicant information, the contact information, key project information, which is the location, term, and amount, fiscal information, and certification. All applicants must use a uniform budget template for their budget. Budgeting follows federal guidelines, which is a SF 524 federal budget template. Key budget components are allowable cost and reasonable and allocable cost. The budget must align with the project goals and workforce outcomes. While speaking about the budget, here are some things to consider, which are allowable costs. Costs must be necessary and reasonable for program execution, properly documented, and compliant with GAAP, which is a generally accepted accounting principles. Some other reasonable costs must align with sound business practices, federal and state regulations, market prices for comparable goods and services, responsibilities to stakeholders such as the public, government, and workforce partners. Any unnecessary or excessive costs will not be approved under this grant review process. Some allocable costs. Costs must directly support the grant's purpose. They are allocable if they are specifically for the grant program. They benefit both the federal award and the organization's broader workforce mission, and they are necessary for the project's success. Some types of costs. The direct costs, which can be specifically attributed to the project, example, staff salaries and training materials. Some indirect costs to support the organization as a whole, but benefit the project, example, facility cost and administrative expenses. Now I'm going to hand it over to John to talk more about some budget information.
All right. Thanks, Chase. So we're just going to kind of go through the uniform budget template. So for those of you who have never applied for state funding, you definitely want to point out that if you look at this spreadsheet, it can be a bit overwhelming, and the intent is not to overwhelm you. So just know that there are some resources out there to help you complete the budget. And as we look at your budget submission, the key is to know that you should provide enough information to justify the cost. So as Chase mentioned, providing that information to demonstrate that the costs are reasonable, necessary, and allocable to the activity that you are proposing to fund. So the bottom line is you need to complete the budget form, do your best, but don't get hung up on it. Make sure you provide a solid explanation of those costs. But if you have a technical error in where you categorize a cost, or if a form isn't precisely completed within this budget template, we're not going to knock you out. Now, with that being said, you still have to complete the form to your best of your abilities. And so you'll see that the budget template, as you open up this Excel form, has a number of different tabs, including the instructions. It includes Section A for grant funds. It includes indirect cost rate information, as well as certification. Go ahead in the next slide then. And so in Section A, this is basically where the state provides all of the information around the standard budget lines. And we also include some grant-specific lines that are applicable to the apprenticeship programs. And so you'll see that within the budget as well. Go ahead and next slide. And so in the indirect cost section, you'll see that this is the place where you mark within the budget how you are handling indirect costs. Now, the purpose of this session is not to go into a deep dive into your direct program costs versus your indirect costs, but it is important to note that every applicant has to identify how you are going to charge indirect. And so indirect costs is basically their overhead costs. They're costs that can't be directly attributed to one program versus the other. And so grantees have a number of different options with this, right? So you can negotiate an indirect cost rate with the federal government. You can choose to use the what's called the de minimis rate. And I see on the slide here, it's a little bit dated. That rate should be 15% of a modified total direct cost. Or you could choose not to request any reimbursement of indirect costs. So, the bottom line is that there are resources out there, and I might be able to put some in the chat from the state Office of Management and Budget that kind of go through a complete tutorial of indirect costs and how to utilize the state systems around indirect costs. So if you have questions on this, again, especially for new applicants, don't be overwhelmed with it. It is important, but don't be overwhelmed. There are resources out there to help you identify, what is your best selection. So again, with new grantees, you're probably going to look at that de minimis 15%, or you could choose not to request any reimbursement of indirect costs. By the time, if you don't have a federal indirect cost rate, you probably do not have time to go through that process before the application deadline for this funding opportunity. Go ahead, and next slide, please. Okay. And Chase, I don't know if you're covering this or if you want me to continue on, or others.
I think you were going to cover this one, John.
All right, great. Just tell me when to stop. So also want to just highlight that if you are selected, if your application is selected as a finalist, you would enter into a grant award with the state of Illinois. Now, this document is, again, especially for new applicants and grantees. This is a complex award, and it's not meant to overwhelm you, but it does include all of the federal and state terms and conditions of this funding award. So all of the requirements that come down from the U.S. Department of Labor, because that's the source of this funds, right? So any of those directives, including some of the more controversial ones that are out there, and I know there's a number of questions in the chat about, any of those directives are pushed down to the state and to you as a sub-recipient grantee. So you would have to meet all of those terms and conditions, and that would be included in your 35 or 40 page grant award with the state of Illinois. Now, we can provide you with a link, and I do believe that there's a link on our program website page of a sample grant agreement for you to look at. So especially if you want to say, oh, well, based on the current state of Illinois grant template, am I ready? Or can we comply with all of these terms and conditions? If you want to have your team review that, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Now, we won't necessarily have all of the federal terms and conditions. We have actually, I take that back. We do have the federal terms and conditions, and so we could probably share that with you as well. And so we'll make a note to post that as well. But here again are some of the core grant requirements that are included in the agreement, including audits, the requirements of having fund accounting. So when you receive a grant, you can't just throw the grant into your just general operating funds. You have to have a way of segregating the grants into a specific account so you can track it. There's fiscal reporting requirements, quarterly reports. There's obligations for you if you have partners that you're going to have subcontract or subawards with. You have to make sure that they have all of the terms and conditions of the award. You have to make sure that you have the right level of oversight, right? Because if your grant is with the state of Illinois, your organization is responsible for those grant funds. It's not, it can't be, well, we awarded, this component to all of our partners, so it's their fault. No, it's your responsibility as the primary grantee to, coordinate those. And we definitely, as Chase mentioned, we encourage those partnerships. That's what makes a successful project. So of course you have to have internal administrative controls of funds. The terms also talk about expenditure of funds and the allowable costs. Typically, we allow a 10% variation of grant funds. We typically don't see a lot of program income, but the award will talk about how to handle that. And also, there are participant reporting requirements. And so, again, we utilize a case management system to track the activities because that is something that U.S. Department of Labor requires, right? They require a lot of information about the individuals that we're serving. Important to show that the program has impact and results, right? So we track the activity, we track the outcomes of the program. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I think that's where Chase is coming back.
Yeah,
All right.
Thank you.
I'll be back on. Thanks, John. So this is what the application is going to look like, and it's formatted to make sure you input the correct information in all these white fillable boxes. So the applicants must submit a detailed formatted grant technical proposal outlining the proposed apprenticeship program. This is your grant application narrative. It is a Word document that guides the applicants to submit the information needed to understand the proposed program. There are 4 main sections. The applicant capacity. Here you must demonstrate your ability to implement and sustain an apprenticeship program. Documentation of need. You must provide evidence that the program addresses a workforce gap and industry need. The quality of a project plan. You must describe the program and demonstrate the quality of said program. And cost effectiveness. Here you're basically providing the budget narrative, which should complement your Excel budget template. The technical proposal is the backbone of your application. It must clearly articulate how the program will be developed, implemented, and sustained. Strong proposals demonstrate alignment with state workforce goals, employer demand, and participant success measures. The project work plan is an Excel spreadsheet. This spreadsheet has multiple tabs circled in yellow, as you can see here, which are considered the attachments. An incomplete project work plan may result in excluding the application from the merit review process. In this work plan, you'll provide the following 7 attachments: the project summary, participant info and outcomes, employer info and outcomes, registered apprenticeship training info, pre-apprenticeship training info, your staffing plan, and goal and activity timelines. If your application is selected as an awardee, you must sign a uniform grant agreement before receiving the funds. This agreement includes 3 parts: standardized requirements applicable to the state agencies, specific provisions unique to the awarding agency, grant or program specific terms and conditions. To download the uniform grant agreement, you visit Illinois DCEO website. Like we said earlier, this PowerPoint is going to be available on the NOFO website, so all these links will be easily accessible to everyone. Jen, you want to go ahead and I guess just put that in the chat now? Yep, Jen just wrote that in chat, so everyone can take a look at the DCEO website there. All right, so this next slide is going to talk about the Uniform Grant Agreement's key components. This grant agreement includes the project description, which outlines program scope, activities, and expected outcomes, deliverables and milestones, which define the key project goals and deadlines, contact information, which designates official grant representatives, performance measures and standards, which specifies the apprenticeship success indicators, and specific conditions, which lists any additional requirements for the grantees. Grantees must adhere to these agreements to receive and retain funding. Deliverables and performance measures are essential for evaluating program impact. So this next slide is going to talk about the application submission process. Applications will be reviewed on a rolling basis until funding is fully awarded. Some key deadlines is the application must be received by 11:59 p.m. on March 21st of 25, and these will be included in the first merit review cycle. All application materials must be submitted electronically via Smartsheet portal. Some important notes is late applications will not be reviewed, and failure to submit a complete and accurate documentation may also result in disqualification. So the grant selection process. Applications will be reviewed by a merit review committee based on 4 weighted criteria. The applicant capacity, which is 20%, is demonstrated ability to implement and sustain an apprenticeship program. The documentation of need, which is also 20%, is evidence that the program addresses the employer needs. The quality of the project plan, which is 50%, and the most important factor, evaluates the program structure, partnerships, and participant success strategies. And then cost effectiveness, which is 10%, is justification of how the grant funds will be allocated efficiently. The review process, the committee follows formal procedures to ensure transparency. The Office of Employment and Training will make the final funding recommendations. Applications that demonstrate strong employer partnerships and clear pathways to sustainable employment will be prioritized. So here are some key dates to remember. Like I said, the application is due March 21st, 25 at 11:59 p.m. with no extensions at all. Anticipated funding award commitment will be July 1st of 2025, and the expected grant period will run July 1st, 2025 to June 30th of 2027. And you can access the full NOFO on the DCEO NOFO page and the Illinois WorkNet apprenticeship page. So on the next slide here, these are just some grantee resources. And like we said, we'll be sending this out, so you'll be able to look through all of these at your leisure. And then I'm just going to kind of leave you with some final thoughts and next steps. So I just want to emphasize what makes a strong application. And it's going to be a clear and detailed project plan outlining your organization and how you'll expand apprenticeship opportunities, a strong employer and workforce partnerships, a strategy for equity and inclusion in ensuring diverse participants in the apprenticeship programs. This NOFO supports high-impact apprenticeship intermediaries who will develop, register, and manage apprenticeship programs, work directly with employers to design customized training solutions, recruit and submit apprentices to ensure completion and career success. And some action steps that you'll need to take. Make sure you review the full NOFO and ensure eligibility and program alignment. Develop employer partnerships and secure MOUs for the registered apprenticeship program development. Submit applications before the deadline of March 21st of 25. Complete pre-grantee registration and submit your applications. And then this next slide is just, these are key contacts that you'll need. And with that, the presentation is complete, and we will move on to the questions and answers section.
All right, so I guess we could just go through the ones that we have in the chat and on the Q&A first, and then we can like maybe open it up to participants here. let's see. So Nate, have you been able to follow these? Let's see. Somebody asked about the apprenticeship tax credit, and it did not expire in 2024, so it is continuing now. So we've got that. And you know what? We'll put info on the apprenticeship tax credit on the NOFO website if it isn't there already. Joy, you asked, is there a list of approved intermediaries? Is anyone not on the list allowed to apply for the grant? There's not a list of approved intermediaries. It's just if you meet all the requirements, you're in good standing with the state, you have a strong application, and you can serve participants. Is this a reimbursable grant? I think John Barr, you're saying yes.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think that was one of the questions. And so basically, is this is it a reimbursement or is there an advance? So typically it is a reimbursement with a very small capital advance. So it's more of a working capital. So basically, to get you through the period of your billing, if you want to advance that, we will allow that, but typically it should be thought of as more of a reimbursement based grant with very kind of tight cash management controls.
Thank you. And then someone asked, how confident are you that US DOL will distribute these funds? Has DOL given insight about whether there may be a pause to this grant program?
Yeah, so I think that was one that we answered. And the official response is DCEO is going to continue to monitor and respond to all of the federal directives. As you all, or as many of you know, there was a kind of across the board pause that was for a couple of days. This is federally funded, and so there's a potential for an impact. I will say that we do have the $5 million in statewide WIOA funds are in an award with the DCEO. The other $5 million is subject to USDOL's approval. And one of the reasons that we are issuing this NOFO now in what could argue some uncertain transition times between administrations is because the U.S. Department of Labor is continuing to move forward with their call for apprenticeship applications. And so having a procurement process through this NOFO to identify our potential sub-recipients and having projects that are ready to go, we believe will make Illinois' proposal that much more competitive. We know that apprenticeships and work-based learning is a priority of this current administration as well as others. And so we are certainly optimistic that these initiatives will continue to have a high priority as we move forward. But I will end my answer by just saying that we have a good degree of certainty around the $5 million. Certainly anything can happen, but based on the information that we know today at this moment, we feel sound enough to issue this NOFO, again, not only to move apprenticeship forward in Illinois, but to make our proposal competitive for funds that are available.
Thank you, John. Shafan asked, is barrier reduction support allowed under this grant? We talked about supportive services, and I feel like that CEJA has delineated between the two or made some distinctions between the two. And I think you could answer that better than me, John.
Yeah, so the short answer is no, right? So but I guess it would depend as it relates to how it's defined within CEJA. The answer is no, but we do offer supportive services, and supportive services are allowed based on what is needed for a program participant to participate in either the technical training or the hands-on training. So I would definitely refer you all to the budget template where that is where supportive services are defined.
Jake asks, is there a list of other potential occupations like CNA that would be considered low skill, low pay, and high turnover? Jake, that's a fantastic question. We don't, I don't. And, I think that
Yeah.
maybe we could identify a couple that we know that we don't want, but otherwise, if you show a need and show that it's not just a low pay, low skill, and going nowhere occupation, then if you can show that there is a career pathway there, I'm sure it would be a strong proposal.
Yeah, and I would also refer everyone to page 10 of the NOFO that outlines a number of resources that are included there. I know that for many of you who may be involved with the local workforce areas and or partners with that process, there's a lot of information and data that is analyzed that looks at okay, well, what are the jobs that are in demand today, and what are the jobs that are in demand in 5 years, in 10 years, and 25 years. And so we encourage you to utilize that data that's already been developed. And not only within the targeted industries, I would point out, as Chase mentioned in one of the slides, this apprenticeship bill, NOFO, is issued within the context of the state's workforce priorities. One of the state's workforce priorities is called the Quality Jobs Initiative, and this is an initiative not only of the state of Illinois, but also the U.S. Department of Labor. And so I would point you to page 7 of the NOFO that outlines characteristics of a good, quote unquote, a good job. Again, information that is continuing to resources that continue to evolve, but there's definitely some links with some good guidance there.
Thank you, John. The next question, where can we find the list of 1,300 approved apprenticeship options? If you all go to apprenticeship.gov, under resources, you can find an occupation finder. You can search any occupation. It'll tell you whether or not that occupation is apprenticeable or not. Also has tons of information with work process schedules, what the on-the-job training should be, things of that nature. So tons of information, apprenticeship.gov occupation finder. What was the goal this year with the grant, and where are you with the outcomes? I think this was Amy asked this while we were talking about the state level goals. We don't have a current intermediary grant out there right now. Well, we have one that is just finishing up from, I think it started in 2021. And there are intermediaries, and Xiaofan was one of them, and I'm sure that there's others in this room that were part of them. They exceeded the goals than what was actually requested, and the goals were actually higher of how many apprentices we had to have and things of that nature. So the intermediaries really outperformed what they were supposed to last time around. So we have faith in intermediaries here. Chris, is our local workforce area, if our local workforce area does not have an apprenticeship coordinator, are we eligible to apply? Absolutely, yes. And, and Nate here is here because he serves as like a state level apprenticeship specialist, that if you need help with an apprenticeship specialist and you don't have one in your area, Nate is here for you to work with. Let's see. 15% federal de minimis. I took note. I'm going to change my PowerPoint slide. Sorry about that.
That was a test. So you passed.
I failed.
No, that was everyone. So to see for those experienced grantees, to see if you would notice over the last.
Look at that. I think a couple
so there you
of them.
go. So you passed. You passed the test.
Yeah. And Amy Santa Catarina, I think, also passed too. So yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So just so you also know that the indirect costs and the de minimis rate has been, it's a complex it's a complex requirement, but not to be afraid of. And there's other training that we put into the chat, and know that this is guidance that continues to evolve, and the rate went up October 1st from 10% to 15% of your overhead, recognizing that certainly there's been inflation and other pressures that where organizations need a higher level of overhead costs. But again, I would point everyone to the NOFO as it relates to indirect costs and what's allowable, and also point you to the review criteria, because as Chase pointed out, budget and overall cost per participant are part of the overall review criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you can charge a rate, doesn't mean you always should, right? Again, not advocating you shortchange yourself, but you also should take a look at providing your most competitive proposal.
Monica Davis has asked for the formatted grant application. Everything should be found, and if it's not on there, we will make sure it's there on the NOFO page on Illinois WorkNet. So that was put in the chat. I did put it in the chat. Somebody said you can't see it, but I didn't have access to send it to everyone. So Jordan Johnson put that in the chat here, but also people will get an email after this. Let's see. I'm just seeing other questions here. Do you pay apprentices from the grant funding? So it's my understanding, and John, you can jump in here, is that the funds can be used to pay for the supplemental education, which is the classroom training. And it also could be used to pay for the on-the-job learning portion, which is they're working, but they're being paid by the employer. So that would be that working with the employer, and you would give the grant monies then to the employer partner that is paying the apprentice. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, John. And then also there could be pre-apprentice stipends, though, that then if they're pre-apprentice activities, as long as it's all reasonable and all, then that could be paid through the grant as well.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Someone asked if a vocation school is approved for WIOA, is it eligible to apply? I think they're all vocational schools could be eligible to apply. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to meet the requirements of the NOFO is the bottom line there. And so if you are, just because you're a training provider doesn't necessarily mean you're eligible. You have to meet all of the requirements outlined in the NOFO, including, providing all of the 8 or 9 design elements that Chase outlined in the presentation.
All right, now I'm going to the Q&A. That was from the chat session. Now I'm going to the Q&A. Kimberly says, will technical assistance be provided for applicants? If so, how can an organization apply for TA? And I think they're asking for people who are going to apply. Is that true, John?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the CEJA model?
Yeah, I think that we're not offering like individualized technical assistance, but I would put a plug in if you are new to the grants world. We are hosting a grants 101 session in Chicago this coming Monday, the 24th, and in Springfield on the 28th. And so I don't know if we can put those links in the chat to register for those sessions.
Yeah, Jordan or Kimberly, could you put it in the chat? Then Suzanne, please comment on the requirement that all training providers must be on the registered approved provider list. Well, so once you get an apprenticeship program approved, then you are automatically eligible to be on the eligible training provider list. It's just a matter of filling out a form and submitting the form, and then you can be on that. So You
Yeah.
go through all the work of creating that program, get it registered with DOL, then you just have to submit a form for the department, for the state.
Right. Now, I do want to point out that this could be a potential issue for an organization that is administering a pre-apprenticeship program. And so a pre-apprenticeship program that is currently not registered with the U.S. Department of Labor. And if that program is considered a true training program, you would need to be on the eligible training provider list.
And do they go through their local workforce area, or is there a
Yeah, we
towards it?
can post some additional information as part of the FAQ to link you to where you would need to go there.
That's great input. Thank you, John.
Sure.
How are applicants to write to DEI when we're told by the federal government that it's now considered illegal? So I don't know if you noticed, but on the 7 elements of registered apprenticeship program, we got those directly from the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor. Where it says equal employment opportunity, that's where the Department of Labor used to say diversity, and now it says equal employment opportunity, but it has the exact same definition. So we're just asking that there's equal access and that the participants you serve are representative of the region you're serving.
Yeah, I would point out that that's at the bottom of page 5 of the NOFO, and also includes the link to the U.S. Department of Labor's website. So we're absolutely aware of the issue. And, certainly, as I mentioned, we'll follow directives from U.S. Department of Labor. So we understand there's a fine line, and language is important with the opportunity. But again, I would encourage you to take a look at the NOFO and how it's presented, and respond accordingly.
Martha asks, we have not found many apprenticeships that focus on persons with disabilities. Will this NOFO allow us to address this mismatch? Absolutely. And that's what this NOFO is here for.
Yep.
Martha. Shannon, since WIOA hasn't been reauthorized by Congress, won't that potentially impact the funding? That's a John question.
It's potentially, but I mean, again, we're based on our the information that we know today. Everything is pointing toward a continuation of funding, and until we hear otherwise, we're going to continue to move forward. Now, we know that there'll be a significant amount of activity within the next month with the continuing resolution at the federal level, as well as the budget for next year's process. Typically, the federal workforce funds that the Department of Labor issues to the state of Illinois and DCEO are issued via a funding notice that is issued in the spring. And so once we have that notice and award in hand, I think the state will feel, and DCO will feel, a higher degree of certainty around the grant funds. And so that coincides with the timeline for this NOFO. And again, we understand we're living in uncertain times right now, but we also know that there is a cost of waiting, and that, if we were to wait for 3 months to get a crystal clear picture of what the landscape is going to look like, we could be putting ourselves into a competitive disadvantage, and not to say the opportunity loss of projects, where our goal is to be in a position to make grant commitments in June and July, right? As opposed to October, November. Those are just commitments, and we still have to go through the whole grant establishment negotiation process. So we understand, it's working with us it's a lengthy process, and so we need this lead time. So we understand. Is there ever 100% certainty? No. but again, we're moving forward with the best information that we have available, and understand that there is a certain degree of uncertainty out there.
Next question: for a RAP intermediary to be eligible, do they have to have a registered program in Illinois, or can they be eligible under the national program? I personally think that as long as you're serving, because we're not an SAA state, but ones that are registered in the state of Illinois are not necessarily national ones. They are in the state by the Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship. We have plenty like Aon and maybe even other businesses like that are registered at the national level, and that's no problem. What we're concerned here is that you're serving Illinois employers and Illinois residents on this. So we're ensuring that your program is actually benefiting Illinois here. Are there specific industries or occupations that this program is focused on? I think that it's in the NOFO. We went over it in the PowerPoint. Somebody asked, construction is a traditional RAP pathway. Will it be considered in this grant for pre-apprenticeships connecting to established RAPs? We have, and you can jump in, John, for construction, we have CJA, FEJA, other things that have pre-apprenticeship, and Illinois Works that have pre-apprenticeship activities that lead to RAPs. So anything that could be funded by them, no, we will not fund. However, there are non-traditional ones in constructions like project managers or things of that nature, but we're not going to fund anything in construction that could be funded by those current funding sources that are out there right now. Considering the focus of this is requiring to be spent on high-paying career opportunities, does this mean that early childhood proposals would not be considered strong enough to receive funding? Yeah, that's a hard one because go ahead, you're on mute, John.
Yeah, I would advise you to take a look at those that labor market information on page 10 again, and take a look at it. And again, if it doesn't, we're not saying it's like it's excludable or ineligible, but you may need to take a look at what does that career pathway look like.
And similar to CNA to RN, something like early childhood educator or paraprofessional that could lead into something like K-12 certified educator would be super strong as a fit. So nothing is excluded necessarily, but maybe not as the end goal of the program.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Is the 1 year of follow-up coordination of career planning expected to continue after the grant period ends? If so, can we include staffing costs for the follow-up period of our grant budget?
So you can't like prepay staff costs after a grant close. So any of the costs would have to be incurred during the term of the grant agreement. So I don't know if that answers the question. So I think we would probably look at, how are you going to continue to work? So the idea is to have, I think, what does the NOFO say, between an 18 and 24 month grant, or 12 and 24 month grant. And so, we would look at, what is your timeline? How's your timeline situated? And, there may be a situation where you need to identify partner programs to support that follow-up activity.
We have a question. I'm not exactly sure what they mean. How will we determine apprenticeships already being funded?
Yeah, I think that, again, I think one of maybe a resource around U.S. Department of Labor listing of apprenticeships. I think there's some resources out there that shows apprenticeships that are active in Illinois. But,
oh, okay. That's what they're talking about. Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know what that. Maybe you can add additional information. Whoever asked that.
Trisha asked, would manufacturing be eligible for pre-apprenticeship as a non-traditional career pathway? Yes.
Probably make an argument for it. Again, I think we would point you to page 10 and,
Mhm.
making an argument.
Will the Illinois Work System require documentation to determine participant eligibility?
Yes,
For
but yeah, it's not, I mean, we'll provide you with like kind of um, you know, the, the eligibility requirements and how that, or how those documents should be maintained either in paper form or electronically or both.
Our company is looking to utilize Guild. I'm sorry, I lose that when people put a thing up, which specializes in helping our employees with curating online learning while getting on the job training. Would they or us be able to apply for a grant? You can definitely use it as the supplemental education in a structured program. So it'd have to be part of the apprenticeship program. The education portion of an apprenticeship program does not actually have to be in a classroom. It could be online. It could be in a conference room. So it's just how you structured what that registered apprenticeship program looks like. So it could be eligible. Can you restate or reference in the NOFO the success measures are located, the number of apprentices enrolled? Somebody said it's on the left page. Okay. It's in the NOFO. Let's see. So the NOFO indicated that the youth category should focus on in-school or recently graduated youth and connect the programs to in-school programs that transitions directly or more quickly into a wrap. This means contrary to the out-of-state goals of WIOA, how will this be addressed in grant grading? This could serve out of school youth as well. It's youth in school or out of school. We're putting a good, we just wanted to ensure that education institutions, high schools understood that they are very much eligible for this grant.
Yeah.
What were you say, John?
I would just add there, the criteria for the applications are listed on page 19 through 21. And so if you all are interested in knowing how the applications will be reviewed, that's precisely the questions that the merit review team will answer or consider for each of the application elements. And so they will look at all the information submitted in its entirety and will apply those criteria as applicable.
Again, this moves up and down. How does this work with school districts that have work-based learning programs but do not have a WRAP? We have participants, but would we need to create a WRAP? So this is the thing. Yes, you have lots of great work-based learning programs now, which we would consider pre-apprenticeship activities. So during this time of the grant, we would want you to be working on creating that registered apprenticeship program that they would have the opportunity to move into at some point within the grant period. We know that not all participants that go through pre-apprenticeship programs actually transfer to registered apprenticeship, but that's the goal, is that they have the opportunity to. John, did you want to?
Nope, I think that's good.
Okay. Are there any suggested methods you can identify to allow potential partnerships if we are newer to this area? I would definitely look into your local workforce area. You've got to, strong applications will have partnerships with employers. I would reach out to, if you're new, to reach out to your workforce partners, your community colleges, your economic development agencies, your chambers, things of that nature, and start making some partnerships there. As a national intermediary with a Department of Labor, healthcare, how can we support and provide free TA? Oh, well, we could actually put your information on our NOFO website if you would like to contact either Chase, me, or Nate. If you'd like to, as a national intermediary, we would love that. Thank you. If the federal funding is not received, how will that impact launching a similar cycle in February, March 2027? John, I have.
Yeah, it's unknown. And I think we don't have enough information to answer that. It's unknown.
When do you anticipate submitting for the funds of as yet received DOL funds?
Is it due like March 13th or
18th?
something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like
Coming up
they're
around the
due in
corner.
March. If they're anything like last year, we knew by June whether or not we got those, and so that's how long it takes. So we're thinking we will know by June, sometime in mid-June.
Yeah.
If
And
if
that's
they
our
could, if it
yeah, sorry, Jen. So that is our plan is to receive, and that's why we have a relatively quick turnaround for this NOFO as far as the March due date, so we can we anticipate based on the interest, we have more than 300 people sign up for this webinar, so we think we'll get a sizable number of applications, and so to review all of those and to identify what would the potential finalists look like. We hope to have all of that in early June. We're also hopeful at that point to have funding decisions and more information from the US DOL side. And so at that point, we can take a look at, all right, we're awarded that additional funding, we can obviously support that many more applications. But if we're not, then we'll have to obviously prioritize those that fit within that $5 million range.
Mhm. Kelly asks if we use these funds to assist employers with a portion of the supplemental cost, RTI, which is the higher education provider, would they also be able to apply for incumbent worker funds from the LWIA to assist in the remaining cost? I think that's braided funding, isn't it,
Yeah,
John?
you could do it. Yeah, as long as you're not double dipping and you're clear about how you're going to support the overall project. Yeah.
I can't find it right now, but I did just see a question that asked, well, how is the cost per participant? How do we calculate that?
Yeah.
I believe we look at how much money you asked us and divide it by how many participants you're going to serve, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So that includes all your costs, and that's what cost per participant is. Let's see, for cybersecurity area focus, can it be in development when we apply for the grant, so long as we have DOL certified apprenticeship programs in progress? Absolutely. We don't believe that you have to have everything in place, but you have to show that you have the capacity, that you do have the employer partnerships. I think that's what makes the strong application are those employer partnerships. Are they really going to hire apprentices for your program? And that you have the capacity to run the program. Let's see, how long does it take for GATA flags to clear? Like, for example, the stop payment list.
That is it's a situational answer, right? And it's probably going to be customized to your specific issue. So if it is the issue is like you don't have a sam.gov account established, there are certain things that you have to go out and make happen. So if you're not, in sam.gov, or if you're not in good standing with the Secretary of State, as if that's applicable to your organization, um, um, it's really going to depend, right? And so a lot of that I would advise do not delay if you do not have if you are not registered or pre-approved. I would absolutely go to that GATA portal this afternoon and start that process with your organization's leadership, and then follow their training videos and FAQs as it relates to addressing those pre-qualification issues. There's some good resources that they can provide there, but it really is very situational.
Virginia asked, do all official program participants need to be WIOA eligible, or can RAs who are not WIOA eligible, registered apprentices who are not WIOA eligible, receive grant services?
So that's going to be, So the 5 million that we have, that is WIOA funding. So that eligibility is a requirement. The 5 million in apprenticeship expansion funds, that will have some more flexible eligibility parameters. And so again, that is something that as we look at making funding commitments, we will also look at that. Let's say in a perfect world, we're going to receive, we'll have both buckets of funding. And so we can look at those projects that may require more flexible eligibility requirements, and we would fund them out of the apprenticeship expansion funds as opposed to WIOA. So there's going to be a little bit of a, there'll be an analysis of what are the projects and the participants that are being served, and we'll work with the finalists to make sure that the funding is going to be a fit, because we don't want you to go into a situation where you're going to have to squeeze, the old round peg in a square hole kind of thing. But again, we're hopeful that we'll have more flexibility with that apprenticeship funding.
Kathleen asked, will the intermediary have direct access then to the DOL rapid system? So it's my understanding that only sponsors have access to the rapid system. We do encourage intermediaries to be the sponsors. So therefore you would have access if you were the sponsor. Otherwise, it's not just open to anybody.
That said, if they're providing case management services, you may be able to work with the ATR, the Apprenticeship and Training Representative from the DOL Office of Apprenticeship for your region, to get access to Rapids, but that would be on a case-by-case basis and might not always be approved.
Thanks, Nate. Grace asked, would tuition and fees for apprentices be an allowable cost? Yes. David Vaughn, when will the next apprenticeship expansion NOFO be released to fund apprenticeship specialists? We're hoping to get that out soon, David.
Yeah, and let me make it clarify that is not a NOFO. That will be that is funding that is specific to the local workforce innovation boards, and will be so it's a bit more limited as far as those entities that are eligible to apply based on how the funding is provided to us from the U.S. Department of Labor. And so it's anticipated that a notice will be issued in the spring for that, and those activities would be funded along the same timeline, if everything stays the way we hope it will, as the previous 2 years.
Thank you. Lisa asked, can we be an intermediary and be a training program for others? So if I'm understanding this right, Lisa asked the question again if I didn't answer it right, but you could be the intermediary and the training provider. So many of our intermediaries before have been community colleges or other training providers as well. Debbie Newman asked, are incumbent workers allowed, or do they need to be newly hired employees who enter RAPS? So many actually do serve incumbent workers. So we're trying to do both. Martha asked, can we use an out-of-state training provider? Good question, John.
Yeah, I don't think there's a restriction on that, but we can double check that as we post FAQ. So just as an FYI also that we're gonna work to post the answers to this, so those who may not have been able to participate can see the response in written form. So we'll follow up on that.
Michelle asked, we work with international professionals. Can we use some funds for credential evaluation in this grant? If they're residents of Illinois and working for an Illinois company, and this is part of a registered apprenticeship program, then I would say yes.
Yeah, but I would say that I know that for certain, international travel is not allowable under the program. So if that was part of the cost, then it wouldn't be allowable.
Mhm. Does the recipient have to be the apprenticeship sponsor for all registered apprenticeships? We have a few apprenticeships where we serve the curriculum provider and support services, but a third party is the USDOL apprenticeship sponsor. That's asked by Shannon. That's perfectly fine. You'll have both. Let's see, to clarify, can grant funds be used for training in OJT, correct? Yes. Just to clarify, there's a 10% cap on administrative costs associated with NOFO, and indirect counts towards administrative costs. So realistically, indirect is limited to 10% and not de minimis or negotiated rate.
The short answer is no. So the again, I would point you to the indirect full training. But indirect costs can be associated with program costs and administrative costs. And so all indirect costs are not automatically administrative. And so I guess that's the shortest answer that I can give without going into a lot more detail.
Candace is asking from a high school district perspective, can we pay teacher salaries who teach the classes? Can we cover student expenses? Well, I would think definitely, some expenses, definitely like if any kind of stipends. But then we do pay some partial salaries for things, at least for program managers and all for managing the actual NOFO or the grant.
Yeah.
How would that work, John?
You would, if you submitted that as a proposal, I don't believe it would be competitive because it would be viewed as supplanting the costs of your
Mhm.
of education that was occurring anyway. And so you certainly could include that as a leveraged cost within your budget, and that would make you more competitive. But I don't think kind of supplanting activity that's already occurring would be a competitive approach.
Sometimes serving persons with disabilities may cost additional for accommodation needs. Is this considered in the cost review? Yes, absolutely. Lisa asked, can we be a lead intermediary, also provide training for other lead intermediaries? So it sounds like you're going to be on multiple grants. You're like a recipient of one, and then you're on others. John, what's your
Yeah, I think
take
that, I mean, again, it's possible as long as you're transparent with what you're doing and that you have the capacity to fulfill all of your requirements to both projects.
Kate asked, will you be sharing the list of current apprenticeship expansion programs on average, and from the ones already in place, what is the average number of people served and placed into RAPs? Well, this is different for each one. Like I said, we're just finishing up a grant cycle. So some came in for very small projects and just serving a few, and some came in for bigger ones, serving a lot. We could definitely share. If you go to www.apprenticeshipillinois.com, you can see how many registered apprentices and programs there currently are in the state of Illinois. Each of these change with grant cycles because the amount of the grants are different. I can't give I think a set answer on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I would go back to that website that you referenced, and we can take a look and see if there's other resources that we could post.
Yeah, definitely. We are a new organization. Will we need a sponsor as a fiscal agent?
Not necessarily, but I mean, I think one of the review criteria is is the organizational capacity. And so for entities, again, many nonprofits in this and other programs have found that partnering with a established grantee or organization that would serve as the grantee and fiscal agent has been a successful model. So perhaps you're part of the one of the essential components delivering one of those 7 or 8 key design elements that Chase talked about in the presentation, right? But perhaps the kind of the overall fiscal administration component is an area that your organization is growing, and so that is a model that we've seen as being successful.
Kate asked, is this a 2-year cycle? Do you anticipate launching a similar cycle in February, March 2027? It depends on if we have funding, what the funding available is, I guess.
Yeah.
John.
No, I think if all things being equal, I think that is part of the vision, right? I think on the apprenticeship expansion or apprenticeshipillinois.com, there is a link somewhere to the state's 5-year apprenticeship plan. And so if you're looking for some more easy reading, I would encourage, and I actually think it's included in the NOFO somewhere, the direct link. But it kind of outlines what is the state workforce board's vision and some of those strategies, which again, this whole NOFO and why we're here is part of that. So it is part of that. And so everything obviously is dependent on funding, but our intent is to continue to support these efforts.
Kelly asked, many apprenticeships extend beyond 2 or 3 years. How does an in-progress apprenticeship impact grant reporting outcomes?
I think you should just be as transparent within your project application, the project quality, and the anticipated outcomes. And I think, again, if you look at the criteria, write your responses in relation to the program requirements and the criteria, and be open with where your participants will most likely be. But then also, I would also say that, if it is a longer term than a 2-year, just to show like, okay, well, what happens next? That's something that is, obviously a concern that evaluators might have, is to say, well, if we fund year 1 and 2, what happens in year 3? And so to show that you've got kind of that continuity of service would be important component of your application.
Kristen asked, can an organization in good standing have a partner service provider that is on the do not pay list?
Can you have a partner? So I don't believe you could pay them until they're off the do not pay list. So they definitely couldn't apply, but you probably would need to wait until they're off the do not pay list before you provided them with grant funds.
Sarah asks, through the JTED program, we lead a collaborative of school districts and their community college and work-based learning partners. For that project, we provide student-level data through regular secure uploads in lieu of using Coordinate. Would something like this be possible for this program? Would you be open to discussion on that?
I would say we are in regular conversation with our Illinois WorkNet partners. I think, as you see in the NOFO, the reporting is anticipated to go through Illinois WorkNet. Our current grants, as Jennifer mentioned, currently that are wrapping up, currently uses Illinois WorkNet, and there's a number of different methods that are used to gather that data. You will have to look at each grant specifically. So I know that I went completely around the block with that answer. So the answer is yes, we're open to it, but it's not to say that that's going to be our a kind of a batch upload is going to be the final solution. It may be that, especially for projects that have WIOA participants, right, funded through the statewide activities, that you are going to have to follow the case management elements that are outlined within WorkNet, and a kind of a batch upload system is just not going to be feasible with that. So that's something that we'll provide training for. But we'll provide more information as it becomes available to the grant finalists.
Thank you, John. Let's see, a couple more showed up in the chat. Can wraparound funds be part of the cost, such as like transportation? It's my understanding that it's true. You just have, you just put it in the budget and then also talk about it in your narrative. Can the funding be used to provide training for mentors? I think that you show that, yes, it can be. Of course, all of the costs go towards the cost per participant, but you show how that makes it a strong application of doing training for mentors. And that helps with retention. We've seen, studies on that as well. The NOFO states it is expected that intermediaries funded under this NOFO will work in coordination and partnership with apprenticeship specialists. If the WIOA that serves our district is not listed as a specialist, would our partnership with them qualify as a specialist partnership to provide services and to qualify participants? Well, we ask that you work with apprenticeship specialists. They may not be in your area, and that's okay. There's Nate, and Nate can help with, and that's, helping with employers and helping to actually put programs in Standards Builder and get them registered with DOL. I think you're saying to qualify participants working with your local workforce area for eligibility purposes. I'm going to refer to John Barr for that question.
You're muted, John.
Sorry, I think we can provide more information within the written Q&A with that one as well.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, John. All right, I think
there's one more in Q&A from Kate. The session on February 28th, and a few people have asked this. Will that cover different information from what has been reviewed here in Wells? So talking about the in-person sessions.
So the morning sessions are going to be a grants 101. So we went through at lightning speed all of the kind of the technical nuts and bolts considerations of putting together both the technical proposal as well as the budget. And so that would be covered in the morning sessions. The afternoon sessions are going to be extremely similar to this as a foundation. We also anticipate there may be some additional information about other NOFO funding opportunities, which again, for those of you who you probably already know, the Department of Commerce has a listing of our current open grants on the website that I'm going to put in the chat, as well as the state catalog of financial assistance. And so we would, we might highlight a couple of those opportunities that our office is involved with as well.
Yeah, thank you all who stayed to the end with us. Thanks, Chase and John and Jordan. You kept up with this great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your help on this.
Yep. And as a reminder, everyone, this will be posted online. We'll send the recording and the link with the slides to everyone as we wrap up. So you can have that if you need to review any of this content. I'm going to drop one more link in the chat for Illinois WorkNet and the WIO page. And thank you again for everyone for attending, and best of luck on your applications.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.